Domitille? Domitille!
Sorry. We know cell phones are a tricky subject. We can't live without them, but we sometimes want to take our distance from them. They keep us close to the world, but sometimes a bit too close. It can be a toxic relationship. Some authors are even talking about an addiction. Addiction, addictive behavior, it can't be good for our mental health, whether we are young or old students. This is what we want to change, to see if a social psychology technique will change a behavior. This is the research project we will carry out this year. The main theme was how to influence preferences. It is a very large subject, so we will focus on how to change a behavior in the short term. We will use the famous theory of blind behavior written by Alexandre to drive us. This theory has been used successfully to explain and predict behavior in multitudes of behavioral domains. It will be the base in our experiment. However, we don't only want to predict behavior, we also want to modify them. We will try to influence the students to stop using their phones at the library by leaving them in a box. But let's start from the beginning and come back to our friend Alexandre. So in his theory, there is three main concepts. The first one is the concept of attitude. How the person perceives his behavior. Is it good or bad? Positive or negative? The second one is the concept of the subjective norms. What people around me think of my behavior. The last concept is the perceived behavioral control. Do we think that we can personally control our behaviors? Lots of studies used these three concepts and conducted experiments to try to figure out which one was the most successful to predict a change of behavior. Conclusions are, it is the last concept. Bingo, we will use it and adapt it to our experiment about cell phones at the library. Based on all this, we propose the following hypothesis. Reinforcing the perceived behavioral control by placing our smartphone in a box will reduce the number of pickups during a phase of focus in the library.
At the beginning, the mental health in the student population raised our attention. Then, after doing some research on the subject, we noticed that cell phone use is an important factor that influences the mental states. Memory, attention, self-esteem. We suppose that decreased cell phone use could have a positive influence on mental health. Those diminutions will be effective by a change of behavior in the short term. The important question here is, how do we influence those behavioral changes? We did even more research and we discovered that the most accurate theoretical model was the theory of plain behavior by Alexandre. Like Domitille said before, this model includes three parts: attitude, subjective norm, and the perceived behavioral control. The first two are sufficient to give the motivation to the person to engage the behavior, but it's not enough. In fact, if the perception of the behavioral control is too weak, then the persons can't really do it. Then, Alexandre went further by dividing the behavior into four parts: target, action, context, and the time frame. All these parameters have to respond to the same level of precision to be compatible to predict a specific action. It's called the principle of compatibility. It's as simple as WH question: who, what, when, where. If we take our example on the CCR project, the target is cell phones, the action is to use less the cell phones, the context is the library, and finally, the time frame is a short term. TPB postulates that intention governs behavior. When we want to do something, our intention has to be strong. Moreover, that's the degree of behavioral control which is the most important factor here, because it moderates the effects of intention and behavior.
For our research project, we looked for articles related to experiments based on the theory of planned behavior. So, we opt for this 2020 study concerning for 30 students from 2 universities in California and concerning their consumption of sugary drinks. The experiment studied the separate and combined efficiency of the 3 informations of the theory of planned behavior. First one, they give information of the consequences of consumption in order to modify the attitude of the person. They expected that their perception will be modified if they are aware of diabetes or cardiovascular risks, but also simply the impact on their weight, on their teeth. Second one, the objective is to modify the perceived subjective link to social pressure. They explain that peers approve of the reduction of sugary drinks consumption and make efforts to reduce it. This can be expected to encourage them to reduce it as well. Last but not least, the researchers tried to increase the perceived behavior control for asking participants to plan when, where, and how they could reduce their sugar consumption. Maybe a good idea to reduce my chocolate addiction.
To me, working on our research project was akin to building a house of cards. Rigor became our foundations. Without it, everything was at risk of falling apart. For instance, on one hand, I learned the importance of having a clear research question to avoid consistently switching from one idea to another. On the other hand, I realized that a weak methodology could make our whole project look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
One can assert that drawing a clear outline of our work took us a lot of tenacity. We faced many challenges, such as methodological adjustments or questions that led nowhere. Research is therefore a trial and error process. We learned not to be discouraged by all the unexpected changes and corrections.
I realized that critical thinking needed to be at the core of our project. We couldn't keep ideas that sounded great but were too broad or ambitious to fully fit our project. Formulating a clear, manageable research question required us to constantly reassess and refine our focus, and I've been happy to improve this skill.
Yes, we definitely improved our ability to evaluate research papers objectively, that is, questioning the methods and spotting their limitations. As a result, we felt more confident in discriminating between well-conducted studies and those with significant flaws.
I really struggled in the early stage of our project when we had to formulate a research question both concise and thorough. I realized that even with a promising idea, Refining it into something concise takes a lot of work. For instance, each concept needed a clear definition.
I agree. However, building the theoretical framework was the most challenging issue to me. Firstly, organizing the whole literature was more time-consuming than I expected. Secondly, reaching agreement was sometimes a complex hurdle to overcome because interesting ideas had to be set aside to keep us focused on the essentials.
According to me, the easiest part of this project was working as a team. At first, we gathered because we already knew each other, but it turned out that we were also very complementary. Right from the start, different strengths emerged. Some were more at ease with methodology, some with bibliographic research, and others with hypothesis formulation.
To put it another way, we managed to divide tasks according to each person's skills, making the work smooth and efficient. We also succeeded in working together when needed, for example, to write an introduction.
I enjoyed working on the theory of planned behavior because it helped me understand the art of designing a methodology in keeping with our research objectives. I realized that the importance of a theory isn't about its popularity, but how well it meets the goal of a study.
As for me, what I preferred doing may have been the critical analysis of the articles. I learned to identify biases and methodological limitations, and to distinguish strong research from unreliable studies. In this way, this exercise truly helped me develop scientific skills.
Building a research project requires substantial investment. As my colleague mentioned, we have spent a lot of time reviewing literatures, and we now have a clear vision of our experimental design. Let me explain the main methodological points that we still need to set prior to moving forward. Firstly, define the population studied. You have probably figured out that we will work on student behavior. But which student? Our phone usage habit depends on academic courses. For instance, medical students may be more focused when studying for exams, while psychological students might be more mindful of phone risk addictions. On top of that, as you can see, we are not typical member of student community. Should we set an age limit? Those are questions that we must cope up in order to build a replicable experiment. Then, second topic. We have chosen an approach that enables us to systematically observe, count, and measure pickup behaviors without relying on self-reporting. Observation will take place in a real time. Consequently, we will need to define our protocol carefully. For example, do we record our observations? Should we create a grid? And what's about the maximum and the minimum duration to qualify as a pickup behavior? Finally, last topic. We must establish our sampling methods. Since it's impossible to observe everyone, we will use random sampling. But what is random here? How many students do we need? Should we choose a fixed spot to observe, like the same table in the library? Or vary our location to add randomness? These details may seem minor, but this is crucial for making sure that our experiment will be representative. That brings us to the end of our presentation. In summary, transitioning from a theoretical concept to an operational framework has been a long but an exciting journey. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope we managed to transmit our motivation and interest. We're now going back to work.